Well, good Sunday evening, WNBA and LA Sparks fans, and welcome in to the LA Sparks 365 Network, your 24/7, 365 comprehensive home of the WNBA and your two-time WNBA champion Los Angeles Sparks. Welcome in, folks, to WNBA 365 for Sunday night, September the 7th, 2014. Of course, via Apple's FaceTime. Joining me from the Heart Studios up in Anaheim, California is Chris Woodmansee. Callan, McClurg joining you folks here from Studio 171 in San Diego. Chris, good evening. How's it going?
Just hanging here. Just got done watching that Instagram video from Dennis Wiggins.
Now again, folks, a quick program alert for you folks. We have a YouTube doubleheader tonight, folks. We have WNBA 365 right now up until 10:30. Then after the first show here, folks, we'll have FIBA 365 to sort of get to some quick injury news concerning the U.S. women's national basketball team, concerning the FIBA World Championships. Of course, their training camp opens up tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Pacific time, 10 o'clock Eastern, over on the Naval Academy over in Annapolis. And with that, folks, we will take tweets and live Q&A to folks during the show, so hit us up on Twitter at LASparks365, at CallanMac3, that's at CALLANMAC with the number 3, or hit up Chris on Twitter at LASparksFan30, that is at LASparksFan and the number 30. And of course, you guys can also click on the black box to join our live Q&A. All right, Chris, as we get on to the task at hand here, man, with Game 1 of the 2014 WNBA Finals between the number 4 seed Chicago Sky and the number 1 seed Phoenix Mercury. And Chris, holy Toledo, man. I don't know what happened today, but it was pretty ugly at the Purple Palace tonight, where the Mercury rout the Sky 83-62 to take the early 1-0 lead over the Sky. The game line score by quarter for Chicago: 8 in the first, 12 in the second, 14 in the third, and 28 in the fourth, for a game total of 62. For the Mercury, 15 and 27 quarters 1 through 2, and then 14 through 20, and then 14 and 27 3 through 4, for a game total of 83. Chris, Elena Delle Donne was, Chris, by everyone's means, was not a factor. Her line tonight, Chris, played 10 minutes and 24 seconds, 1 for 4 from the field, 2 points, and did not play the remainder of the contest, Chris. So that's the turning point, man, more so than, everything the Mercury did, Chris. But Chris, your thoughts real quick as we prepare to get to the stats here from everybody. Your thoughts about how Game 1 went down this afternoon down there in the desert.
Just a blowout win today by the Phoenix Mercury over the Chicago Sky.
As we get to the box score here, folks, a very rough day for Chicago. And, Chris, we knew that the Sky would have their hands full with the Mercury in the finals. Tamara Young and Elena Delle Donne only factored for 2 points each. Sylvia Fowles, 19. Epiphany Prince, 9. Courtney Vandersloot, 8. Allie Quigley, 13 off the bench. Jessica Breland, no points. Jamira Faulkner, 8. Courtney Clements, no points. Markeisha Gatlin, 2 points. And Brandon, no points. Sasha Goodlett, DNP. Coach's decision for the Phoenix Mercury tonight, or today, in a really one-sided affair tonight. In the game, Dewana Bonner, 6. Candice Dupree, 26, to lead all scorers tonight on either side of the story. Brittany Griner, 12. Penny Taylor, 9. Diana Taurasi, 19. Aaron Phillips and Misty Bass both had 2 each. Shea Murphy, no points. Yelena Coburn, 4. And Anita Jacobson-Zagota, 3 points. And Tiffany Bias, no points. Both Jacobson-Zagota and Bias only played 2 minutes each. No lead changes, no times tied. The game played today at the U.S. Airways Center in Phoenix, Arizona. The officials tonight were Roy Goldbein, Lamont Simpson, and Amy Bonner. Total attendance, 13,263. Time of the game, 1 hour and 49 minutes. Chris, let's go to Chicago real quick, man, because the talking point, Chris, by everyone's means, is just how bad the Sky played, and also, Chris, that Elena Delle Donne's back is going to basically, Chris, give the Mercury the WNBA championship, because she is not 100%, Chris. She is dealing, Chris, what we have heard from sources is lower back inflammation and major stiffness, Chris. She's been sitting on the bench with heat pads on consistently, Chris. And 10 minutes of play, Chris, 2 points. Not the same sort of Delle Donne we've seen all season, Chris. Is her absence really, Chris? So basically, the question being is, will Deladon's absence, Chris, basically give the Mercury the 2014 title on a silver platter, basically?
I think so. Without EDD, 100%, I think they'll give the Mercury the 2014 WNBA Championship really easy.
So again, folks, the Phoenix Mercury make quick work of Game 1, defeating the Chicago Sky 83-62. And Chris, we go to Phoenix real quick, man. Now, you think maybe when you think about the Mercury, you would be either Griner or Taurasi leading, but Chris, it's Candice Dupree tonight. Played 30 minutes, went 13 of 17 from the field, plus 30 in efficiency. Chris finished with 26 points tonight, Chris. Now, Chris, normally, I mean, when you think of the Mercury, as you know, when you think of Phoenix, you normally think, okay, it'll be either Taurasi leading or Griner's going to lead. But Chris, this is why the Mercury have been so good all season, Chris. It's not just like how it is with the Sparks quite often, Chris, how it's one player, two players every night, Chris, but they have other players to step up and fill the void, Chris. So Taurasi still has 19, Chris. BG has 12, but Chris, it's somebody else doing the dirty work and putting up the big numbers, Chris. Your thoughts about seeing the Mercury show off their depth tonight, seeing that, okay, Taurasi had a good game, as did BG, Chris, but it's someone else, though, taking leadership here and saying, look, I'm leading the pack today, ladies, so hop on my back, and I'll carry you guys to a Game 1 victory, Chris. Your thoughts about seeing the Mercury, you know, showing off their depth right now when it counts the most, seeing someone other than Taurasi or Griner leading the way for Phoenix tonight?
It's just very awesome to see someone else other than Taurasi or Griner leading the way for Phoenix.
Chris, as we go now to the game stats, man, very, very ugly, to say the least here, Chris. Chris, the only stat I have to throw out there, Chris, biggest lead. Chicago didn't lead, Chris, and the Mercury led by as many as 30 points in Game 1, Chris. So you know Elena Deladon's absence is truly the X Factor right now, playing down there with the X Factor in Phoenix. Player stats once more again, folks. The player leaders tonight: Sylvia Fowles, 19 and 11. Courtney Vandersloot, 5 assists. 2 players for Chicago had 3 steals, and 3 players had a block for the Sky. For the Mercury again, Candice Dupree, 26. Brittany Griner, 7 rebounds. Diana Taurasi dishes out a new playoff high, 11 assists, and 3 players had 2 steals. And Brittany Griner, welcome to the Griner block party, 8 blocks in the game tonight for BG. Game 2, folks, as we go there. Now, Chris, Game 2 is the pivotal game here, Chris, for the Chicago Sky. Tuesday night, Chris, back there at the U.S. Airways Center, dealing with X Factor down there in Phoenix, Chris. 6 o'clock game time. Chris, this is your season right here if you're Chicago, Chris. If you do not win, you are pretty much going to be favored to be swept here, Chris, by this Mercury team. Chris, in your mind, how heavy does the Sky's future in the series bank on Game 2 on Tuesday back there facing the X Factor down there in Phoenix?
A huge deficit, huge game for Game 2 in Phoenix for the Sky. Because if you lose, down 0-2, going back to Chicago, you need to, if you go down 0-2, you're going to need to sweep, win 3 straight games against Phoenix. That's going to be really tough. You win Game 2 to at least go back to Chicago tied 1-1.
Now, Chris, staying with Game 3. Now, folks, we're not looking past Game 2 for no reasons, folks. But Game 3, though, folks, is going to be a non-home court game for the Chicago Sky. Now, folks, the reason why you're saying, well, Callan, why are you saying it's a non-home court game? Folks, the Chicago Sky have been booted out of their home arena for Game 2 or Game 3 in Chicago, folks. They have been ousted out of Allstate Arena, folks. They're going to be playing Game 3 at the UIC Pavilion, folks, which is a 9,500-seat arena on the campus of the University of Illinois at Chicago, a 9,500-seat facility. Chris, this same deal took place last season where there was some problems with booking of summer events at Phillips Arena, Chris, where Game 3 and 4 had to be moved to the arena at Gwinnett Center due to some events, Chris. Now, Chris, I don't know the full details here. I'm going to go to the Allstate Arena website, Chris, to see what the deal is here. But, Chris, this has been a talking point, Chris, for a long time about when home teams can't have their distinct home court advantage, Chris. Now, I know that Allstate Arena, Chris, is not in central Chicago. It's in Rosemont. This is the site, Chris, where we had WrestleMania 22 back in 2007. But, Chris, I'm going to find out why the Sky can't play games 3 and 4 in Chicago. But, Chris, what is your thought, though, knowing that some of these teams, though, Chris, have to move their home games, especially, Chris, in the postseason, move their games out of their home arena because of other events over the summer going on?
Just very terrible. Move their home games out of the arena, especially in the postseason. Just very terrible.
Now, folks, now there is a good excuse, though, folks, as to why the Sky have had to move their games, folks. Legendary country music recording artist, one of my favorites, folks, Garth Brooks, is playing 5 straight shows at Allstate Arena, folks, from Thursday through Sunday. So, Chris, okay, I know, Chris, that it's a big deal, Chris, but at the same time, though, man, something has to happen where, regardless of whatever event it is, Chris, Garth Brooks, Bieber, One Direction, or, Ariana Grande, Chris, whatever the act is, Chris, and also, Chris, regardless if it's the WNBA or not, Chris, let them finish the series at home, please, because, Chris, that's the one deal that every team in any sport you play, Chris, banks on and feeds off the most is their hometown crowd, Chris. And when you have to move them out because of a concert, Disney on Ice, another sporting event, Chris, it just doesn't have the same home court feel, Chris. I mean, we can go back and look at Atlanta last season, or, Chris, by gosh, when the Sparks had to play at Galen Center at USC because of the Lakers being in the finals in 2009, Chris. So it just doesn't sit right with me, Chris, that you can move a pro event, regardless if it's the WNBA or, the championship game for the NBA. If you have to move the Bulls out of United Center, Chris, I don't understand it, Chris, and I don't get why you have to do this, Chris, regardless of who the act is, Chris. Even if it's President Obama, Chris, don't kick a team out of their home arena because of another venue, Chris, when the Chicago Sky, Chris, have full priority over their home arena, along with the UIC Flames and then the Chicago Wolves, Chris. When these teams, Chris, have are tenants of the arena, Chris, they should come first. Not Disney, not Enrique Iglesias, not Jay-Z and Beyonce, not Bieber, Chris. The team should come first to play their home games, regular season, postseason, and regardless of whatever league it is, Chris, WNBA or arena football, Chris, sports teams should come first because they're the paying tenants, Chris. What are your thoughts, though, about seeing the Sky ousted again for, okay, yes, it's a legendary, concert of Garth Brooks, Chris, but at the same time, we're talking the WNBA Finals here, Chris. It's the championship for a league, Chris. Your thoughts about seeing this happen for the second straight year?
Just very terrible.
So again, folks, the Sky will be playing games 3 and 4 at the University of Illinois Chicago Pavilion, folks. Now, again, the Pavilion, folks, is located in central Chicago. It's on the campus of UIC, home of the UIC Flames, of the college ranks, and also the Windy City Rollers, who happen to be a roller derby team and also is home to the Chicago Wolves. Or actually, check that, folks. The Wolves also play at Allstate Arena. But again, it is what it is, folks. But again, we'll take your take here, I guess, folks, on Twitter at LA Sparks 365 or at Callan Mac 3 or at LA Sparks Fan 30. Do pro teams deserve to be, or can you basically, I guess the question is going to be here is should a home team be forced to move out of their home arena to accommodate other events? Let us know on Twitter and use the hashtag HomeCourtAdvantage, and we'll get your tweets later on in the show. Now, Chris, as we go back to Game 2 here, and I know I kind of vented a bit about Game 3, but Chris, this isn't the first time, though, man, that we've had controversy involving, Chris, a team being moved out of their arena. Now, Chris, a famous example, Chris, I can remember right off the top of my head is when the Nuggets and Lakers had played in the 2007 or 2008 Western Conference Finals. Game 3 was supposed to be in Denver at Pepsi Center, Chris, but on that same Monday night, your boy Vince McMahon and WWE was coming in for Monday Night Raw. So there was a double booking fee there, Chris, and in that case, they worked out a deal that the Raw event would take place that same Monday at the Staples Center in Los Angeles, and then Game 3 would be played, though, over there in Denver. But, Chris, again, man, I know that things pop up over the summer or during the time, Chris, during the postseason. But, Chris, again, though, I think it has to be, brought up here again, Chris, that, these teams, fork out the money to play their games there, to get ads and sponsors in for the arena, Chris. And I just don't understand, though, Chris. I mean, again, man, regardless if it's the WNBA or, the lingerie football league, for heaven's sakes, folks. Chris, regardless of whatever league it is, that you can just, tell a team to leave their home arena because you have another act coming in is unfair, and it's very, very, it's kind of, it's just not a right move, I think, Chris, that you can take away their home court advantage because you have something else coming up, Chris. And again, I know that we said a lot about that, man, but I don't know. I mean, I just don't really agree with that. And again, we'll take everyone's take on Twitter again with the hashtag home court advantage, and we'll get to that during the course of the rest of the show. As we turn our attention, folks, back to Game 1 tonight again, the Phoenix Mercury completely whitewashed the Chicago Sky this evening by the final score of 83-62. Now, Chris, there's not too much else occurring here. Now, I know, Chris, we have FIBA 365 coming up next here on our next show here, folks. Now, again, folks, we'll have WNBA Radio back tomorrow night, back here at 10:30 p.m. back on Blog Talk Radio. Chris, last night was a phenomenal show last night, Chris. We had a lot of great insight from a great writer, Chris. The great WNBA writer, Chris Sue Faber from Hoopism on Twitter, joined the show last night, Chris. And she hit a grand slam last night. It was a great interview we conducted for about 30 minutes last night, Chris. Gave us a lot of great insight about the series, her thoughts about the Sparks, and what has to happen with that franchise, Chris. How do you think we did last night on that interview with Sue Faber last night? And will she be back, hopefully, sometime very soon? All right, folks, we're having a bit of a... Yeah, Chris, we're having a bit of a... We're having the infamous poor connection screen come up on your side right now, so we will... hopefully we can say it again here, but again, Chris, real quick, give it to us like really brief and quick, Chris, your lasting thoughts about last night's episode 4 of WNBA Radio with Sue Faber of Hoopism.com on the show last night.
Just an awesome show last night. She did awesome. She hit it out of the ballpark. So speechless about it. And yeah.
Yeah, folks, it was to the point where Chris couldn't even muster a sentence last night. He was that intrigued and that speechless that we had Sue Faber on, folks. And hopefully we have Sue and some of the other writers coming on sometime very soon. But again, folks, WNBA Radio back on the airwaves tomorrow night. Showtime is 10 o'clock tomorrow night. We will have a 9:30 WNBA 365 tomorrow night back here on the network. Now, folks, real quickly here, some notes from Game 1 tonight, folks. Again, the Mercury won the WNBA titles back in 07 and 09. This is the Chicago Sky's first time in the finals in franchise history. Phoenix's only home court loss was back on May 23rd against the Stars, the Mercury's third game of the season. Now, the previous record for the largest halftime lead was 20 points set by the LA Sparks against the Detroit Shock in 2003. Phoenix is 3-0 against the Sky this season, and the previous record for blocks in the game was 7, set by the late great Lisa Leslie twice in 01 and once in 2002. Chris, we're going to get to a off-the-court story real quick here, Chris, from the WNBA. A few days ago, Chris, the WNBA held their annual Inspiring Women luncheon that included Becky Hammon, that included the Chris, the star power, of Becky Hammon, of Lynn Dunn, and even Chris, who's been basically Chris a folk hero sort of, the star pitcher from the Philadelphia Little League team and Monet Davis, Chris, were all at this function for the WNBA, Chris, that included, again, as we said, current Spurs assistant coach Becky Hammon, former WNBA coach Lynn Dunn, and Little League Baseball World Series sensation Monet Davis. Chris, this is a great event, Chris, that is put on every season by the WNBA, Chris, how they basically, Chris, reach out to women, across the country, regardless if they play sports or not, Chris. Chris, I'm going to go ahead and read the interview they conducted, Chris, with Monet Davis. Chris, WNBA.com asked her this first question of why do you want to play basketball and be in the WNBA one day? Monet says, basketball was the first sport I ever learned how to play, so I've loved it since I was younger, and I've been playing it ever since. So I've just been playing basketball longer and longer. I play the better, and I get, and the more I love it. Close quote. And then WNBA.com asked her, Chris, of course, this is sort of down my alley too. How was it meeting one of your heroes, Maya Moore, and why is she one of your favorite players? It was really cool meeting her. I've been watching her since her freshman year at UConn. I like her style of play. She knows how to play the game well. WNBA.com says, what's the coolest thing you've gotten to do since the Little League World Series? Monet says, going to my first WNBA game, which was probably like the craziest game, and throwing out the first pitch of the Dodgers game. I got to meet most of the Dodger players as well, which was neat. Well, Chris, the WNBA, Chris, has really, inspired so many women, Chris, to, regardless if they're male or female, Chris, that they can, still shoot for their hopes and dreams and expectations of, going somewhere in life, Chris. Chris, there's a very, very telling photo from the WNBA, Chris, that I will screen share for the viewers out there that is really, Chris, very awesome, Chris. And the caption, Chris, basically reads, as soon as I can go there, folks, the caption here, folks, reads, one coach passing knowledge onto another, which is basically, Chris, Lynn Dunn talking with Becky Hammon about her style of coaching for the Spurs next season, Chris. So, Chris, the photo says a lot, man, but, Chris, honestly, as we get ready to close out of here for the night real quick, to get ready to go on to FIBA 365, Chris, how much will Lynn Dunn or Chris, even former coaches, or Chris, even the current coaches, Chris, how much will they, how much input basically will they give Becky Hammon as she, makes that transition, Chris, from being player to coach, and Chris, well, going to the NBA now at this point in time?
Give her a lot of information and impact her before she goes into the NBA coaching.
So again, folks, you guys will be able to see Becky Hammon on the sidelines of the defending NBA champion San Antonio Spurs come October 25th when they tip off the season. Somewhere, I think they're playing the Heat or the Cavs, something like that. I forgot what they're doing, but you can catch her, though, on the sidelines very, very soon. Chris, real quick here, we'll get to the five observations from Game 1 that saw the Mercury again drub the Chicago Sky 83-62. The point they've been making here, Chris, about this, the 5 points is meeting in the middle, pain in the back, Mercury's team defense tonight, you, me, and Dupree, and Mercury passing are the 5 observations from the game tonight. Chris, as we close out this show, get ready to go on to the international basketball stage, Chris, your thoughts about Game 1 and also your take about Game 2 as we get set for Game 2 on Tuesday back down there in the desert.
Just a blowout win for the Mercury today over the Sky, and I don't know about Game 2. Should be a good one or another blowout.
Chris, this is desperate times calling for desperate measures, Chris. This is where the comeback kids come back and try to at least, Chris, salvage Game 2, Chris, because like we said, man, if you lose Game 2, you might as well just, give the Mercury the title on a silver platter and, lose Game 3 in Chicago, regardless if you're at Allstate Arena or at UIC Pavilion. So again, folks, coming up next will be FIBA 365 here, folks, getting you set for FIBA training camp that begins tomorrow, folks. And 2 big injuries on the USA front. How big are those blows? They're 2 big scores that they might need in the tournament. We'll talk about that, though, folks, around the corner. But until then, folks, we'll take a break and come back here. FIBA 365 is coming up next here on the LA Sparks 365 Network. So, folks, please do not go away, whatever you do.